Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be showing you guys my updated Dark Magician list. This is not just any Dark Magicians, it is Dark Magician Dogmatika, so let's go ahead and jump right on into it. Starting off, of course, we do run 2 copies of the Dark Magician. Only reason why we run 2 copies of this card instead of 3 is because this card can become a bit of a brick in hand if you draw multiple copies, so we want to just make sure that we don't draw too many by only running 2 copies. If you draw both copies in your hand, then that's kind of bad luck for you. Continuing on, we do run 1 copy of Dark Magician Girl. Only reason why we run this card is because we do run 1 copy of Magician's Salvation to be able to bring this card out, as well, of course, the Dark Magicians, the Fusion Monster, so that way we can summon that. And then to wrap up the kind of bricks of the deck, we do run 1 copy of Timaeus the United Dragon. This card says that you can send 1 spellcaster monster or 1 spell or trap that mentions the Dark Magician from your hand or face up on the field to the graveyard to special summon this card from your hand. This card also has a really powerful effect, saying that during your main phase, you can fusion summon 1 fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as material. However, it does have to include a spellcaster monster. You can only use each effect once per turn and only once that turn. You can only use the effect of Timaeus the United Dragon once per turn. However, that doesn't really matter too much because we should be ending on a copy of Red Eyes Dark Dragoon by using this card and Dark Magician, of course. But really, that's it for the bricks of the deck. Moving on into the consistency cards, we do run 3 copies of Magician's Rod. This is, of course, being the best normal summon of the deck, just being able to add 1 spell or trap card from your deck to your hand that specifically lists the card Dark Magician and its texts. This card also has another effect that says during your opponent's turn, if you activate a spell or trap card or effect while this card is in your graveyard, except during the damage step, you can tribute 1 spellcaster type monster to add this card to your hand. You can only use each effect once per turn. However, this card is really powerful, being able to bring itself back to your hand whenever you activate a spell or trap, as well as search out, of course, a spell or trap that mentions the Dark Magician. Continuing on with the consistency package, we of course run 3 copies of Magician's Soul. Magician's Souls is really powerful, being able to send up to 2 spell or trap cards from your hand and or field to the graveyard and then draw that many cards. This card pairs really well with a card that we'll get into in a little bit. However, this card also has the effect of you can send 1 level 6 or higher spellcaster monster from your deck to your graveyard to activate one of these effects. You can either special summon this card or send this card to the graveyard to special summon 1 Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl from your graveyard. You can only use each effect, of course, once per turn. However, this card is really powerful, mainly for the effect of just being able to draw cards, which is just really powerful. Continuing on to search out the Magician's Souls, we do run 2 copies of Illusion of Chaos. Illusion of Chaos just says that you can reveal this card in your hand to add 1 Dark Magician or 1 non-ritual monster that mentions Dark Magician from your deck to your hand. Then you can place 1 card from your hand on top of the deck, so of course mainly you'd put this back, just so that way you can send this from the deck to the graveyard to special summon the Magician's Souls. Of course, as I said, we do have a card that pairs really well with Magician's Souls, and that of course being Soul Servant. Soul Servant has the amazing effect where you can place 1 card on top of the deck from your hand, deck, or graveyard that is either Dark Magician or specifically mentions Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl except Soul Servant. So practically this just allows you to search any of your cards by putting it on top of the deck. And then this card also has the effect of, during your main phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard to draw cards equal to the number of Palladium monsters or Dark Magician and or Dark Magician Girl with different names on the field and in the graveyard. So therefore, if you have, let's say, Soul Servant in grave as well as a Dark Magician, then you can just activate Soul Servant effect in grave to banish this card and then draw 1 card or however many you have of those specifically listed cards with different names. And you can only use that effect once per turn. And then, of course, to pair with the Illusion of Chaos, we do run 3 copies of Preparation of Rites just to be able to search Illusion of Chaos. The main reason why we want to run 3 copies of Preparation of Rites instead of 3 copies of Illusion of Chaos is because Illusion of Chaos can eventually brick in your hand, while Preparation of Rites can just be sent to the graveyard by the effect of souls to allow you to draw a card. So really, it's best to run 3 copies of this and only 2 copies of this. Of course, we do run 2 copies of Dark Magical Circle. This card is really powerful, saying that when this card is activated, you can look at the top 3 cards of your deck, and then you can reveal 1 Dark Magician or 1 spell or trap that specifically lists the card Dark Magician among them, and then add that card to your hand. Also, place the remaining cards on top of your deck in any order. The reason why that effect is actually really good, not just for the reason of being able to add a Dark Magician or a card that lists Dark Magician, but let's say you were to draw into, let's say, a copy of Preparation of Rites, Soul Servant, and we'll say Eternal Soul. Let's say you were to have to pick between any of these cards, but you want to be able to have Preparation of Right. You could add, like, let's say Soul Servant, put Preparation of Rights back on top of the deck, so that way when you use your souls, you are guaranteed to get the Preparation of Rights that you need, or even the secondary effect of Soul Servant. Dark Magical Circle also has a really powerful second effect that says, if Dark Magician is normal or special summoned to your field, except during the damage step, you can target one card your opponent controls and banish it. So therefore, that means once per turn, you can just get a banish pretty much for free just by using this card, as well as, of course, being able to use that on your opponent's turn with a card like, of course, Eternal Soul. You can only use each effect of Dark Magical Circle once per turn, which I think is fair. Continuing on, we do run one copy of Secrets of Dark Magic. This card is a fusion card for the deck as well as a ritual card, so really you can use either one of these effects to be able to fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck by using monsters in your hand or field, including Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl as fusion material. Or you can ritual summon one ritual monster from your hand by attributing monsters from your hand or field, including Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl, whose total levels equal or exceed the level of the ritual monster. Not really too much to be said about this card. It's just really powerful when you draw into it, or you could even search it just to be able to guarantee a fusion. Then to wrap up the Dark Magician cards that we run in the deck, we do run one copy of Magician's Salvation, which this card says that when this card is activated, you can set one Eternal Soul directly from your deck. If you normal or special summon a Dark Magician Girl, except during the damage step, you can target one of those monsters, special summon one Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl from your graveyard with a different name than that summoned monster. You can only use this effect of Magician's Salvation once per turn, and you can only activate this card once per turn. Reason why this card is so powerful is because it, of course, searches out Eternal Soul, as well as being able to get your Dark Magician Girl onto the field, or even if you have a different way to get Dark Magician Girl on the field, you can just, of course, summon the Dark Magician. Eternal Soul, though, is actually really powerful with the effect of every Dark Magician in your monster zone is unaffected by your opponent's card effects. So this card is practically just built-in protection for the deck, as well as it has the effect of once per turn you can activate one of these effects, special summon one Dark Magician from your hand or graveyard, or add one Dark Magic attack or 1,000 Knives from your deck to your hand. The main use of this card, of course, we will be using it is to special summon a Dark Magician from our hand or graveyard, mainly so that way we could activate cards like, of course, Dark Magical Circle to banish cards our opponent controls. The main downside, of course, to Eternal Soul is that whenever this card leaves the field, it destroys all monsters you control, so you gotta be sure to keep that effect in mind, because, of course, that is mandatory, and last thing you want is to wipe your own field of monsters. Of course, Magician's Salvation is not the only field spell we run. We do run 3 copies of Secret Village of the Spellcasters. This card says if only you control a spellcaster monster, your opponent cannot activate spell cards. However, if you control no spellcaster monsters, you cannot activate spell cards. So practically you want to be sure to end with a spellcaster on field so that way you can be sure that you can use your spells on a later time. And of course, to pair with that, we do run 1 copy of Terraforming, and personally, I run 3 copies of Metaverse, because just being able to drop this on your opponent if they're playing something like, I don't know, Sprite or even Kashtira, they just won't be able to activate spell cards. And then, of course, for the small Dogmatika package, we do run 2 copies of Ecclesia the Virtuous. This card says it cannot be destroyed by battle with a monster that was special summoned from the extract. This card also says that you can only use each of the following effects of Dogmatika Ecclesia the Virtuous once per turn. If a monster is special summoned from the extra deck is on the field, you can special summon this card from your hand. Also, if this card is normal or special summoned, you can activate this effect to add 1 Dogmatika card from your deck to your hand, except Dogmatika Ecclesia the Virtuous. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of this turn. This card is really powerful, being able to search those cards like, of course, Dogmatika Punishment, as well as Dogmatika Fleur-de-Lis the Knighted. This card says that during the main phase, if a monster special summoned from the extra deck is face up on the field, quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand, and then if you control a Dogmatika monster besides this card, you can negate the effects of one face up monster on the field until the end phase of this turn. This card also says whenever your Dogmatika monster declares an attack, you can make all Dogmatika monsters you currently control gain 500 attack. You can only use each effect Dogmatika Fleur-de-Lis the Knighted once per turn, And one thing to mention about that attack modulation effect is that is a permanent gain. So therefore, you can constantly keep boosting your fleur-de-lis or even your ecclesia pretty quickly with this card, actually. And then, of course, to be able to search out Ecclesia, we do run 3 copies of Nadir's Servant. Nadir's Servant just says, send 1 monster from your extra deck to the graveyard, and then add 1 Dogmatika monster or Fallen of Albaz from your deck or graveyard to your hand that has less attack or equal to that sent monster in the graveyard. Also, for the rest of the turn, after this effect resolves, you cannot special summon a monster from the extra deck, and you can only activate this card once per turn. Which this card is just really powerful just to be able to search out Ecclesia, or if you really need to, you can search out Fleur-de-Lis. However, more than likely, if you do have multiple copies of Nadir's Servant, you can always just use Souls to be able to pitch it to the graveyard to draw extra cards. Then, of course, we do run 2 copies of Dogmatika Punishment. This card says target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, send 1 monster with equal or higher attack from your extra deck to the graveyard, and if you do, destroy that monster. Is that until the end of your next turn after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck, and you can only activate 1 per turn, which, I mean, isn't really that bad. However, it kind of does suck to lock yourself out of being able to special summon for the extra deck, because this deck is very, or I'm not going to say it's very reliant on the extra deck. However, this can become a bit of a problem if you really rely on fusion summoning or whatever the next turn. Then to wrap up the deck, I do run 1 copy of Shaddoll Schism. This card just says during the main phase, you can fusion summon 1 Shaddoll fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from the field or graveyard, but it cannot attack directly. Of course, the main reason why we use this card is to summon out Winda on our opponent's turn, so that way they are locked into only having 2 summons. Alright, quickly moving on into the extra deck. Of course, we do run 1 copy of the Dark Magicians. This card says that once per turn, if a spell or trap card is activated or effect is activated, except during the damage step, you can draw 1 card, and if that card was a spell or trap, you can set it, and if it was a trap or quick play spell, you can activate it this turn. If this card is destroyed, you can special summon both 1 Dark Magician and 1 Dark Magician Girl from your hand, deck, or graveyard. Of course, the fusion requirements for this card is 1 copy of Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl and 1 Spellcaster monster. Of course, continuing on, we do run 2 copies of Red Eye's Dark Dragoon. Main reason why we run 2 is because we should be able to make 2 in any given game. So let's say game 1 or game 2, you should be able to summon more than 1 copy of this. However, another main reason why we run 2 copies is because Diabolosis the Mind Hacker is a very powerful card used by Kashtira just to be able to rip any card out of our extra deck, so we don't want them to take our 1 and only copy of Dragoon if we drop it down to 1, so definitely 2 is the best option. Of course, to pair with the Dogmatika cards, we do run 1 copy of Titanic Cloud the Ash Dragon. This card says that during the end phase, if this card was sent to the graveyard, you can then search for any Dogmatika monster and add it to your hand. Then, of course, we do run 2 copies of Elder Entity Intis. We pair this card with our copies of Dogmatika Punishment because this card says that if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can then destroy 1 monster on the field, which is just really powerful. As well, of course, we do run 1 copy of Apocalone, which if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can search for 1 Shaddoll card from your deck, so of course you add Shaddoll Schism. And then 1 copy of Winda to be able to make on your opponent's turn to lock them out of being able to summon monsters. Continuing on into the Link monsters, we do run 1 copy of Artemis the Magistus Moon Maiden. Main reason why we run this is, of course, just to be able to put our rods in grave after we summon them. And then we do run 1 copy of Selene, Queen of the Master Magicians. This card says that if this card is link summoned, place spell counters on this card equal to the number of spells on the field and in the graveyard. This card also has the effect of once per turn during the main phase. Quick effect, you move 3 spell counters from your field to then special summon 1 spellcaster monster from your hand or graveyard in defense position to a zone that this card points to. So therefore you can use this card, of course, to be able to summon out Dark Magician or summon out any monster from your graveyard, just so that way you can, of course, climb into Access Code Talker. I don't think I really need to explain what this card does, but for those who don't know what it does, just destroys all your opponent's monsters, and then you just start attacking for game, practically. The only downside, of course, is that we only run lights and darks, so therefore you can only really get 1 banish because you want to keep Access Code Talker on the field to make it really big to be able to swing over your opponent's cards. Continuing on into the Xyz monsters, we do run one copy of Iban Illusion Magician. This card says that once per turn, you can detach one material from this card to special summon one spellcaster normal monster from your hand or deck. And then this card also says that whenever a spellcaster or normal monster declares an attack, you can target one card your opponent controls and banish it. You can only use that effect once per turn. So of course, this card is mainly just used to be able to set up more banishes, so that way you can help clear out your opponent's board. However, this card also does have another use with a card like AA Zeus, but I'll go into that in just a minute. Moving on, we do run one copy of Bright Eyes Flare Metal Dragon, because if other decks can tax us, we want to tax them by making it to where if they activate any card or effect, they must take 500 damage immediately after it resolves. So practically, this card just says, oh, you activated? Burn 500, which is just really powerful. Then, of course, as most of y'all know, number 11 Big Eye is actually rank 7, which we can use to help take our opponent's monsters, whether that be by taking our opponent's Kashtira cards, or even if we wanted to take any card that would be like too big of a problem, we just steal it. However, the main use of this card is, of course, to steal a Kashtira card, so that way we could attack with the Kashtira card and then go into AA Zeus. So that way they kind of lose their card entirely. They can't really get it back, except for, of course, by if you detach to, put it in the grave. However, Sky Thunder is really powerful to be able to remove 2 materials off this card to just completely field wipe all monsters on the field. So that card is just really powerful and makes no sense not to run this card when this deck can easily make these Xyz monsters. So that's going to be about it for the video, guys. Be sure to leave a like, comment down below what you guys think of the deck profile, as well as what you guys would change to make it even better. Also, be sure to tell me down below if you guys would be interested in seeing duels with this deck. But with that being said, guys, that's going to be about it. See ya.